Okay, so we are looking at building my Black Repertoire. It's very poor, it's outdated, it's 20 years old. I really need a refresh. But crucially, my process is basically I'm going to start from the main lines and start to expand out. This is traditional behavior because you face the main line the most often. You don't want to just prep loads for something which is a sideline. But again, I'm going to follow the general approach, which is strategy over theory and memorization. I want to understand themes, ideas, and generally how to take on the really aggressive lines that we're about to see here. So this is my Sicilian repertoire. I think you can create a copy. Fantastic. And that gets created. So I'm going to use this Sicilian one. And I'm just going to call this YouTube prep. So one of the main lines of the Sicilian, so I'm going to show this as black because this is what I play. So I'm just going to be very open and transparent about the lines that I play. So this is the Sicilian Najdorf, where you basically chuck your pawns on d6, a6, often on e6 as well. Your bishop goes to e7, knights on c6 or d7, and you try and use this c file to your advantage, while white is likely going to try and castle quickly on the queen side and start bombing it to try and checkmate you. So there are many moves here: bishop e3, bishop g5, bishop c4, bishop e2. I know people play g4, rook g1, h3, a3. There is there's knight b3, f4. There is just an enormous amount of variations here. And this is particularly why you need to be a little bit more, I would say, adaptive, understand the strategy, and not just memorize theory, because you're going to forget things here. Let's look at bishop g5. So this is the main, I would say this, at least this was the main line when I was playing 15-20 years ago, but yeah, who knows these days. Actually, the easy way to check is just to go to the UltraDatabase and let's see what's actually played the most. And you can see actually I was totally wrong. So bishop g5 used to be the main line, and that was 89,000 games. The average year is 2006, and bishop e3 is now 2011. That's a lot more popular. You got h3, which is a lot even more recent. People playing knight b3 in 2019 as well. And remember, this is an average, right? So people have been playing this literally for decades. So the average being so recent really suggests that actually bishop g5 is not the main line, but it's up there. I'm going to focus on bishop g5, and part of that reason is because it's so sharp and you really need to know some of the key ideas. And I've destroyed many times in this line, so I need to improve. So where are we? So on f4 here, I'm gonna cover this main line. As you just saw, there was tons of variations here, but let's stick with f4. And now there are two real ways to progress. White is really trying to start putting some pressure on the center and on the king side. We've got this ugly pin, so we do need to sort this out. This is game over if we don't do something here. Bishop e7, queen c7, they're overwhelmingly played. And what I'm going to do actually throughout this exercise is that I'm going to consistently look at the moves database. This is especially in sharp lines, when people are using engines, when people are coming up with novelties. I just want to make sure that I understand some of the key ideas that people are trying. If anything's quite popular, I want to try it. And I want to just know how to defend. So you can see here that actually I'm playing queen c7. This is now a lot older, but to really take this to the next level, I likely need to either have queen c7 as a backup, because everyone knows I play queen c7, but also play some of the more theoretically sound lines. But let's continue with queen c7 just so we know exactly how to operate. And this is where the main line happens. So you've got queen f3, and then b5. And you can see here that there's still thousands of games, or there was 1,700 games that have been played. And actually, the really cool thing about this line is that you can see that actually the score is the total win rate. So anything above 50% is good for white. Anything below 50% is good for black. And you can see that actually b5 here is doing pretty well. This is partly because people have not really been looking at this line for a long time, so that does help. But this b5 line is extremely aggressive as well. When you're looking at this line, you might think, okay, well, there seems to be so much going on. So there's a few options here, right? So there's bishop takes, pawn takes, just to weaken my structure and really start to set up maybe some queen h5s, f5s, even some castles and knight d5s. It's super dangerous. There is castle, and we will cover that now. And then there is this move, e5, which actually you'll be surprised at how many people have played this online. The idea here is that e5, the queen is attacking the rook, and also the e5 pawn is attacking the knight. So it's that double hit, but we have the very cunning bishop b7 here. We effectively attack the queen, forcing it to either go to g3 or h3 usually. I think sometimes people play queen e2, but that's less good. Then we get to move the knight. We can take first and then move the knight, or just go knight d5 immediately, and we're totally fine. And if we turn on the engine, you'll see that actually here, black is already ahead, even though it's looking a little bit ropey. You can see that queen g3, knight d5 is slightly better for black. But the problem is, as soon as people realize that actually this is not winning material, you don't really play this, right? So let's look at castles. And you can see already this is getting extremely sharp. Black actually goes for the immediate b4, and white here has a ton of lines that they can play. But what you'll realize is that even though the engine believes that there is a lot of lines, you have to look at what happens in practice over the board. And I will look at the previous years, maybe the last 5 years, just to see if there's any new popular lines showing up, or if someone really strong has played something crazy. I will take a look. But here, for example, when we turn on the UltraDatabase here, you'll see that actually knight d5 is an option. That is played only 55 times, but I have never come across it, but it doesn't mean that I shouldn't know how to defend against this. When you've got a popular idea, you really need to figure out how to combat it. So, but what is important is to just continue on what's practical, and what you'll see is that actually I choose the practical lines for white here, because we know that that's what I'm most likely to face. I'm not going to face the hyper sharp engine lines. It's of course important to know, but I want to just make sure I know rules of thumb, strategy in these situations. So knight c, this is super, it's just a normal move to make, right? So you don't want to put your knight on b1. So you chuck it on e2, because your idea is basically g4, knight g3, and to set up a bishop d3, rook he1, and really go for it in the center. So what we do is we say, okay, hey, look, this line is still open, but we don't mind because we've still got that bishop b7. So we go knight bd7, g4 is extremely popular here, and now we go bishop b7. And the reason why we do this at the very least is an attacking move on the weak e4 square. We've already developed the other pieces. We need these pieces protecting our king, and this is just a way to actually accelerate our attack on the white's queen side. So traditional is knight g3 here. Yeah, as you can see, loads of people play a bunch of different things. If we turn on the engine, I believe it's slightly better for black. It's slightly better for black. But in practice, does that really matter in such a sharp position, some small edge, when in reality, this is just going to be a hyper sharp game where one small mistake is going to cost the game? So I've decided that actually I'm going to play a move here that's very rarely played, and that's d5. The traditional move is rook c8. It's like, hey, look, I'm coming for your king. I'm going to do something like e5, get this out of the way, and then go for your king. That's super standard, but I've come up with d5 here. I think it's extremely practical, opens up on my bishop, attacks the e4 pawn, and the traditional move e5 is met with knight e4 here. And what's my idea here? Well, actually, we're almost blocking up the center a little bit, at least on the E file. We know that the rook really enjoys coming to this file and blowing things open. But there's a crucial element here that I want to focus on. Actually, this E5 pawn becomes weak. And it's not because of F6, although I have seen some lines with that. It's because of a different move. So let's look at a few options here. After takes, we can go for queen e2. And this is where I used an idea from a different line. It's where you go h6, bishop h4, and then g5. And this looks a little bit nuts here, right? Like you're opening up the king when you are in position, like you're opening up the side that you're supposed to be protecting. We're supposed to be going this way, white's supposed to be going this way, but actually in reality, the reason why this is so powerful and popular in terms of strategy is that you weaken the center, and suddenly it turns out that white's king is unsafe and black's king has a lot of protectors. This pawn here is extremely important, and you'll see that actually black can really hold their own here. And you can see actually one game was played in 1993, a long time ago, but with two 2200s. And this is sometimes important to see how this all turned out. But generally, if we turn on the engine, I think it's pretty even here. Again, doesn't matter too much in the hyper sharp lines, but the main idea here is after takes, you can play bishop g3, you can play bishop g5. Either way, I'm going bishop g7 or I'm taking this immediately. What you'll see after bishop g7, let's say we can play queen e5, I believe here. Bishop g7, rook c8. My king is perfectly fine here, and actually this diagonal becomes really powerful. White can't take this pawn. It's really safe here, and we've got an open file. We've got two open files. We've got really good bishops. We've got good protection around the king, and to be honest, I really do think the practical chances here are a lot higher than probably what the engine says. Now, this h6 g5, since I found this in other parts of theory, it's a really nice counter attack to white's real aggression here. And so I realized that actually this is happening a lot. So here, d5 is what I do, but I just wanted to show you what happens when you don't play d5. You play rook c8, bishop e7 is really common, but what ends up happening is that you get this situation where white doesn't double his rooks, but puts his rook on the d file and on the e file and the d file. All the pieces are looking extremely ominous, and yes, we are fine here as black. But this is, in terms of winning chances, I think white has some real good opportunities. I know here it's suggesting that the black is doing fine, but in practice I find this extremely difficult. It's not a novelty, but it's just a bit of a different move, and it's just quite hard to play for white, especially seeing a new position with just so much counterplay from these various lines. And now, actually, part of the way here that I started to come up with this is because I built this solve branch feature here. And this is actually so important for either finding novelties, finding moves that haven't been played before, but are actually very good engine moves and create a totally different idea. So what you do here is basically you click solve branch and it runs Stockfish through every single possibility that has been played. Of course, some have never been played, but you can use for example, the Lichess database, which I'm going to add soon, or the chess.com database to really buff out the number of games here so you can get a much more broad estimate of all the full decision tree. And what you see here is actually h6. I know it's being played a lot recently, but d6 is totally fine. Crucial element is when you're playing a new move, you don't want to go so far against the engine where the move is just fundamentally unsound. But what you want to do is build up a repertoire with moves that are probably not played too much, but are still sound and give good winning chances in practice. And so that's now in my repertoire, and bishop g5 is at least the main line. I'm gonna probably reach this position a fair chunk, and I'm gonna play d5 a decent amount. And I think there's many sharp lines here. I'm sure that there are some variations where black will play e5, knight e4 and try to go for it. But I think with various defenses, and remember the bishop is open now, the rooks are going to come out. We're going to have options for a5, a4. It's a little bit slow, but we will have those options, and we may even be able to get that bishop g7 in after h6 g5 and use this line. So it's a really nice counter attack. You don't really see it all that often, but ever since it got shown to me by Anish Giri, it stuck with me as a way to counter attack right on the white's queen side. So that's my thought process here. This is just one line of the bishop g5. There are literally hundreds of permutations here. Quickly, I'll go through some of them. Even here, for example, we talked about e5, we talked about castle, but actually white has the top engine move, which is bishop takes f6. And if we actually go through bishop takes f6, you'll see that there is a move here which is f5 that is so rarely played, but it's the top move. But what you'll see is when you solve this branch, for example here, you'll see that actually bishop f6 is the top engine move. Actually f5 looks really good here as well. So that's something, actually this is just a very good example here, right? So it has been played 191 times, but that's probably only 10% of, maybe a little bit higher, of all games. And that's just not in my prep. So I'm gonna basically immediately have to go through how to play against f5. If I immediately look at it, I think I'm playing the b4 e5, but I need to go through it because it's too easy to get caught out here. So after bishop takes f6, g takes f6, f5 here is overwhelmingly the best move. You can see it's plus 0.94, but it's very rarely played. And again, people have just not been in this line very much, and even the 2700s didn't play it. And so after the move here is b4. And why does this work, and why do you have to do this in this exact move order? If you go, for example, e5 first, white plays knight d5 with a tempo on the queen, and then moves the knight. While if you go b4 first, the knight has to move back, then you go e5, knight moves back, and then you go with some traditional development, whether that's knight c6 or bishop e7. You can go h5 to block the queen h5 route, and you've got a pretty comfortable position. You still don't have this d5 square, but you do have good chances to break through, because white is really lacking in development. But again, if I was seeing this position brand new, I would need to know that this has to be played first. I, of course, could work it out on the board, but it's important just to know these ideas. Okay, remember when f5 is played, and this actually goes in other situations as well in the Sicilian Najdorf, where you can play b4 first and then e5 because you get to kick out both knights at the same time. So this is just a little bit about a few of those interesting features. So solve branch is so essential for these highly theoretical lines or highly tactical sharp lines. If you can use that, you not only have a good shot at finding a novelty somewhere, but you also have a good shot at building a more stable repertoire that can withstand even some of the most deepest prep from your opponents.